Freaks and Geeks. It's a television show from 1999, but it takes place in 1980. It only ran for 18 episodes. When I first heard about it, I thought it was going to be another one of those teenage dramas, but then I saw the list of people involved. Judd Apatow is the executive producer, Seth Rogen is one of the stars, along with James Franco and Jason Segel. So with all those people, I figured Freaks and Geeks must have some kind of an edge to it. I mean, this doesn't sound like a group of people that would make a cheesy high school drama. I was disappointed to learn that it's sort of a cheesy high school drama. The show follows two siblings, a 14-year-old boy and I believe a 16-year-old girl. They attend the same high school. For the boy, the show is a coming-of-age story. He goes through all the problems that you would expect. Things like getting too old for trick-or-treating, showering in gym class, dealing with bullies. Not much unique about his storylines. But they're all relatable, and they do end up teaching lessons. Now, the girl has more of a gimmick. We're to believe that in the past, she's always been more of a nerd or a geek or whatever the terminology is, and that this year she's breaking out of it. She doesn't want to hang with the smart kids anymore because she's changed, and now fits in better with the freaks. That's where the title comes from, by the way. The girl hangs out with the freaks, and the boy hangs out with the geeks. I actually didn't even catch on to that till I watched half the series. To me, the freaks just kind of seem like the cool kids, but apparently they're freaks. The geeks, on the other hand, were pretty clear. I said it's sort of a cheesy high school drama, but it does have meaning. If there's one lesson that this show teaches, it's not to judge people based on their surface. It puts a lot of work into promoting stereotypes and then breaking them. The whole show is called Freaks and Geeks, which are both labels you would assign to groups of people, generally negative labels. The show sets out to prove that both freaks and geeks aren't what they may seem. They're complicated individuals, and it's unfair to group them together as if they're all the same. One of the geeks is this guy. They really try to make him look as geeky as they can. His glasses make it so you can't really see his eyes, which makes you see him as just a geek, rather than who he is. Throughout the series, we grow to see him as that individual that we couldn't initially see. And there's many parts to his personality that you wouldn't expect to see from a geek. Same thing with James Franco. He plays the role of the stereotypical cool guy, but he's much more complicated than we would expect. There's so many parts of his personality that go against that stereotype. In the final episode, he's having a great time playing Dungeons and Dragons with all the geeks. And the whole series is just loaded with instances like this. The bullies end up being sensitive. This bully reminds me a lot of Kevin from Ed, Edd and Eddy. Just thought I'd throw that out there. The strict dad is funny at times. His friend's dad, who's the coolest, is cheating on his wife, so it turns out he's not all that cool. It's all over the series, and I'd say that's probably the biggest takeaway from it. And it's a good message, and I'll admit, this show made me look at things like this in a way that I hadn't before. The female lead, Lindsay, is just about perfect. The entire show was centered around her, so everything would have been considerably worse if this actress wasn't so great. It's a hard role because it's a character that wouldn't typically exist in real life. Not to this extreme anyway. It's a complete and genuine personality change over the summer. The story we're used to seeing is someone trying to change and be someone they're not. Here, they actually changed. And that's a hard role to fill, and this actress does it just about as perfect as possible. Throughout the series, she starts wearing this old military jacket. I guess it's symbolic, but it also helps you believe the character change. It's a dumb premise that I wouldn't have greenlit past the writers' meeting, but since the execution is just about perfect, I'd say they get away with it. Seth Rogen is in this show, but he's completely underused. He's on the cover and he's in the intro, but he's barely on the show. Of all the main characters, he's in the show less than any of them. There's characters that aren't in the intro that are in it more than him. It's over halfway through the series before he even gets his own storyline, and when it happens, it's pretty weak. His character is good, and he's a source of some humor, but he's just very underdeveloped and just not in it enough. If you're ever able to invent a time machine, I have a good way for you to make money. Go back to 1999, have me watch this show, and then bet me that Seth Rogen will become a massive star, and the actress who played Lindsay wouldn't be heard of much after this. I'd say that's a crazy notion, and I would take that bet. And can I just spend a second saying how great James Franco is in this show as well? If you need someone that's really cool, but also sensitive and complex, and also likable, since James Dean isn't around anymore, I'd say James Franco is your guy. My biggest complaint about Freaks and Geeks is that it had some tonal issues. I called it a teen drama, and I'm not too familiar with many teen dramas, but I think this has a lot more humor than most. It's hard to walk that line between drama and comedy, and for this show, they were both better when they were subtle and natural. Here's when they go too far on each side of it. They had one very serious episode called Token and Chokin'. One part of it was about drug use, and that was serious on its own, but the other part was about this character and his peanut allergy. In class, he reveals that he's really allergic to peanuts, to a degree where if he eats one, he could die. So then, that day at lunch, this bully character sneaks some peanuts in his sandwich when he's not looking. And just as he said would happen, he's rushed to the hospital and almost dies. Doesn't make any sense to me. Seems like a dumb excuse to get really serious in a hospital room. Why would you give him peanuts right after he says he could die? The character says he didn't believe him because he's always saying stuff like that? But stuff like what? He's always lying about things like having allergies? What's the motivation for such a lie, and what's the motivation for him to call him out on it? Remember, all this hospital room drama is in a show that's not normally that heavy, and all the drug stuff in the episode wasn't great either. In my opinion, second worst episode of the series. The worst episode is when they go too far in the comedic end. Our main guy becomes the school mascot, which already is uncharacteristic of him. Then, when the big game comes around, his friend ends up being the one in the costume, for reasons that also don't make much sense. The whole sequence at the big game is a misplaced attempt for some wacky humor. The guy in the suit is making dumb wisecracks the whole time. He's not taking any direction from anyone. Why? I have no idea. At the end, he reveals himself as the one in the costume. Again, I have no idea why. Probably would have been smarter to remain anonymous. The whole thing was out of place. The episode didn't fit in with the series, and the sequence didn't even fit in with that episode. Since I went through my least favorite episodes, I should mention my favorite as well, because there are some really good ones. Probably more good than bad. This episode is about Jason Segel's character. He's a big fan of rock music. Early in the series, that's basically all we know about him. This is the episode that expands on the character. He loves drumming. He turns on Rush in his headphones and just rocks out on his drums. Now, his dad is a military guy, and he tells his son that if he doesn't get his grades up, he has to enlist. But it's not much motivation for him because he wants to be a drummer. He views school as a waste of time because he plans on being a big-time drummer. Lindsay helps him realize that if he wants to be a drummer like this, he has to get serious about it. His newfound seriousness makes him drive his band away and motivates him to audition for a semi-popular band. He bombs the audition and realizes that maybe he's not quite as talented as he thought. It's a big realization for him that sometimes following a dream like that just isn't realistic. The message is conveyed perfectly in a realistic and relatable manner. Unlike the episodes with the choking and the mascot, this is something that's completely relatable. The viewer is able to put themselves in his spot and is able to apply the lesson to their own lives. Not to mention how it properly establishes his character and gives him a foundation for the rest of the series. It's very well done. And really, overall, I'd say the whole show is well done. I can definitely point to some silly parts, but in general, it's a thumbs up. Now, I'm not the target audience. I stumbled upon it in a weird way. I could have bailed on it as soon as I learned that it wasn't what I thought it was, but it was able to keep my attention all the way through the series. It does seem to be intended for teenagers, but I would actually recommend it for any age. You'll learn some lessons, you'll laugh plenty of times, and if nothing else, it's a unique way to see all these famous actors in their early days. But keep in mind, if you're expecting something like Superbad, It's nothing like it. Let me know in the comments if you've seen Freaks and Geeks and what you think about it. Let me know which parts you agree or disagree with, and anything else you have to add. If you haven't seen it, have I convinced you to see it? And if I have, come back and let me know what you thought. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.